Hello and welcome to My Voice podcast. Today I'm joined in the studio by David Hardman, who has over 15 years experience in equality, diversity and inclusion. He has organised focus groups and ensures that they are inclusive by providing them with suitable strategies that align with an organisation's goals. I'll be speaking to him about his early years, his education, his career and what led him into disability sport. So welcome, David. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you have lived experience of being non-verbal until you were 4 years old. So please can you tell me a bit about that and how you overcame that barrier?
Yeah, sure. I guess the first thing to say is this is a topic I haven't necessarily spoken about publicly. There's probably a number of family individuals that are very aware of my early years and my journey. Not a lot of my friends know about this, actually. So if they listen to this is going to be quite new.
Oh.
So at a very early age, up to the age of about 4.5, I wasn't able to talk. So non-verbal. It's not because I didn't want to talk. It was just something that I wasn't able to process at that time. And my mother, at my early age, kind of went to various people, specialists, and at the time, you know, the various people said I wouldn't be able to talk for the rest of my life. My mum's a very strong-willed individual, so didn't take no for an answer. So went off and spoke to various other people. Mm-hmm. And where I'm from, so I for your listeners, I'm an Essex boy. You can probably tell by my accent. I live near Southend-on-Sea.
Right.
And yeah, in that local area, it's very diverse, and the support for people with additional needs is brilliant. I think when we spoke in kind of the other day, you know, various kind of schools that are very supportive of young people with SEN needs or additional needs. And so, yeah, my mum kind of went out to find out what support was available, and she came across a language unit based in a mainstream school. And at the age of, I think I was about 4, went to that language unit essentially to go and learn how to talk. And so in that year, I kind of learned, I guess, kind of rewiring my brain and of how to talk. And yeah, after that, went off to another school for non-disabled children, and I kind of then started, you know, my journey into kind of education. But I think, you know, as an adult now, is understanding why that took place. I believe I'm definitely dyslexic.
Okay.
Not been diagnosed, but and that's actually a bit of a journey I'm going on at the moment. Is how do I go and get that diagnosis and stuff. But you know, things like probably in my brain it goes very fast, but sometimes talking, you know, doesn't always come out in the right way, or if I write, I might miss a word, right, you know, occasionally.
Okay.
But yeah, that was kind of my journey. Now I can't, you know, in a conversation, I love to talk now, whereas at an early age I didn't. Right. But I think that early part of my journey has definitely influenced, like the career journey that I've gone on now, which I'm guessing we'll definitely get into.
We will, yeah.
But yeah, so that was kind of the initial journey.
So how was it for you in your education? No.
Yeah, I mean, I did okay at school. You know, when it got to senior school and your GCSEs, I did okay, but there were definitely, you know, subjects that I might be maybe struggle with slightly. But I think due to my dyslexia, you know, having a bit more time to process the question in front of you and how you would answer it. You know, I think when it comes to school and exams and that time pressure to get everything down on paper in a space of time, I certainly struggle with that.
Right.
And after school, when I went to college and then university, in the college period, I did something called a GMVQ, which is very coursework based, so really suited me, and I did very well in that, and that meant I got the grades to go to university. But then you go to university and it's very different. You know, it's very much about coursework, but then you've got this big exam at the end of your year, which takes up a big part of your grade. And I certainly struggled throughout university.
Do you think you were supported though throughout your education, or?
Well, I think it's probably me not wanting to burden people.
Did you mention about your dyslexia?
No.
Right.
And I think, you know, people of my generation and older, it's probably a similar story in that people have gone under the radar and really struggled.
That must have been really difficult for you then, because you haven't spoken about it.
I mean, it certainly was a challenge. I guess that's probably made me who I am today, though. It's like been part of my process, and I've had to maybe work a bit harder in certain areas of my life to get to where I am now. And if I were to look back and think, how could I have done things different? Absolutely, I would have probably highlighted my struggles a bit better, and you know, maybe got a bit more support. But where I might have been somewhere different. So I always try and look back at those as learning experiences to where I am now. So yeah, but I've kind of, as I say, I do love learning. It's not to say that I'm one of these people that don't like learning. I really do like learning, but sometimes I learn but different to maybe others in that environment. But
sure, yeah, absolutely. So what interested you to get into equality, diversity, and also like disability sport? So you mentioned you have friends and family with 2 sons who've got CP.
Yeah, well, look, just in terms of when it comes to, because I work in sport, right? So first and foremost, sport is a huge passion of mine, of my family, a number of the friends that I have, and that was the big thing for me in secondary school. You know, I was the sporty kid. Often was in a number of the teams, like in school, and I was a pretty good badminton player back in the day.
Right. Okay.
I got to national stand, like that kind of tipping point of, you know, higher county level. Absolutely loved it, sports mad. But at the time, you're at that stage in life, it's what do you do as a career? You know, that you're 16 years old. What am I going to do in my life? What courses do I take? I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be involved in sport, and I wanted to be a PE teacher at that stage. But I went through university, did the whole travelling thing, and then when I came back, I still knew I wanted to work in sport. So I started to work at a local school, and that school was responsible for PE and school sport across the whole borough.
Yeah.
And you'll find in current day terms, you normally have these school games organisers in local authority areas that look after a cluster of schools. So I was effectively that type of role. And at that time, there were a number of priorities that these school sport partnerships were responsible for. And when I joined, it was almost like, out of this list of 10 things, what interests you, Dave? And the thing that really popped out to me was disability sport. And at the time, there weren't many individuals that I worked with or across sport that really were interested in disability sport. Right. Not probably out of interest, it's more about
knowing what to do.
It's like the fear factor of, okay, well, what does that mean? If I have someone that's blind or a wheelchair user or someone with intellectual impairments, how do I cater to their needs? But I saw that as a real challenge.
Okay.
And as I said to you off the podcast, I from a very early age, I was in a world where I engaged with many disabled people. One, because of, I mentioned to you about my non-verbal, that meant I was in an environment with many children with additional needs, sometimes people who are autistic, etc. And then on the other side, in my personal life, my mother, her best friend, has got 2 boys that have got severe cerebral palsy that are in an electric chair.
Yeah.
So at a very early age, I was around the boys, and as I got older and in a work context, you kind of then look at your experiences, but then Nicholas and Jamie, their names are, and you would always think, well, what are the opportunities for them? And, you know, which at the time were very limited.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Particularly in my local area.
Yeah.
They did lots of respite kind of type of clubs, but it wasn't sports specific. And it got me thinking, when I got to that stage in my career where I had that choice to do disability sport, well, I could play a really key role in my local area to provide further opportunities for young disabled people to go and play sport. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And subsequently, there was a fund at our local authority called the Aiming High Fund, where we applied for £30,000 to create a multi-sports club for young disabled people in the borough of Southend.
That's amazing.
And we were successful.
Amazing. Brilliant.
And that was, if I look at my career, that's one of the most proud parts of my career, that I created this club out of nothing.
Amazing.
Got some investment and involved the local sports clubs in the local area to see if they were interested, and if they were interested but scared, come along, learn on the job. You know, we're there to support you.
Yeah.
And we created this really thriving community where mums and dads and carers would bring their children, and it was a space where people felt safe, welcomed, and really included. And yeah, I mean that was the catalyst really for me to where I am now.
So did you get a lot of kids come and join that?
Yeah, I mean,
so was the turnout good?
Yeah, well, like with anything, it started small. Yeah. And we went to a number of the SEN schools in the borough, and there's 4 to my knowledge in the borough. But then, as I mentioned, the education kind of sector in Southend for inclusion was really inclusive and diverse. So there was many schools that would have units for SEN children that we would, through my connections in the local schools, we went to all those schools and kind of said, look, we're about to create something really special for young disabled children. Can you help us promote it? Yeah. The benefit of this as well, because we had funding, it was free of charge.
Amazing, that's even better.
And so, all of a sudden we've got a small number, but then, as you know, word of mouth got around, and then, we had up to 30 young people coming along.
Fantastic.
All with varying impairments and additional needs, and, we just had this kind of outlook on it to say, well, it doesn't matter what your needs are, come along, we'll find a way. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in having a person-centred approach.
Absolutely.
Whereas I think there are a number of sports coaches out there that will perceive it to be too difficult and they haven't got the skills, when actually it's about you and that person creating a bond and a relationship to understand how I can get the best out of you. Yeah. And if it means me tweaking certain things to get you hitting a tennis ball or throwing a basketball in a net, we'll find a way.
Amazing. Is it still running?
Do you know what? I think it's not running in the same guise. Oh. It's operated differently, but I'm pleased to say, in my local area, it's not just that one club. There's many other sports clubs. Now, whether I had an influence on that, who knows? Yeah. But I'm pleased to say that there's many more opportunities for people to go and access, many different clubs and sports in that local area. So,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, thanks. So I was going to go on to, you supported Emma Everett, who was on my podcast last year. She's a filmmaker.
Yes.
And how did that come about in her film Foot Fault?
Yeah, so probably for your listeners, I currently work at the Lawn Tennis Association, which is the governing body for tennis in Britain. And I lead on a lot of our ED&I work. And in my early part of my career in tennis, I led on all our disability work and still have a big role within that. But yeah, last year or the year before? Everything's gone so
quickly, yeah.
We've got many different formats and that's the beauty of the sport that I work in. We don't just have one format for one impairment group. Our sport, we believe, is truly inclusive to all, and therefore we have many different formats of the game that will support those with different impairments. And at the time, we didn't necessarily have a format for those that could play, that had physical impairments but could play the game standing. Because if you're not aware, our most prolific parasport is wheelchair tennis.
Wheelchair tennis, yeah. You were telling me about that you can do it standing, and I was so surprised. I didn't know that was actually an option.
Yeah, and I think, we've learned a lot over the years. And when I first came into the LTA, and at the time it was the charity, the Tennis Foundation, wheelchair tennis was this big sport that was starting to embed into the Grand Slam events of Wimbledon, US Open, French Open, Australian Open. And therefore, if someone came through the door that, maybe had, let's say, cerebral palsy or who was an amputee, we would say, why don't you get in a chair? And, rightly so, there were some people that said, well, I don't want to get in a chair, I want to play standing. And, at the time, it was, well, this is our only pathway that if you want to go and compete and perform for GB, that you can go down. But that's always niggled with me and many other tennis nations. And a couple of years ago, we were getting rumblings of this new format that was starting to emerge globally called para-standing tennis.
Right.
And
so that is an actual thing. So there is para-standing tennis.
Yeah. And so this format was starting to gather pace. And I had done some previous work with the military on how you can include someone, but we didn't have this competitive framework that would support someone with that wanted to play para-standing. And so I got rumblings of this new movement internationally from my counterparts in Australia and the US. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, we need to be doing this in GB. And at the time, I got put into a WhatsApp group with a number, it was probably about 20 individuals from across the globe that had this interest in para-standing. And one of these people that was on the chat was a guy called Adam Hills.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't know who Adam is, Adam's this amazing individual that has a TV show called The Last Leg.
Last Leg, yeah.
And that all started back in 2012 around the Paralympics in London.
Yeah.
And he kind of pitched that idea to Channel 4.
Right.
And so when they were doing the Paralympic coverage, he then pitched this idea for The Last Leg. And, you look back now, it's still really strong, and it's going on Channel 4 on Friday evenings at 10 o'clock. And I thought, is that Adam Hills, the guy off the TV, or is this just another Adam Hills? And so I just reached out to Adam and said, Adam, just to let you know, I'm Dave from the LTA and I lead on our disability work. Would you be open to coming down to the National Tennis Centre and having a chat? And things really snowballed from there.
I was going to say, it's amazing how things turn out.
Yeah, he just said, it's brilliant that you've just reached out to me because I'm actually about to start a documentary on para-standing tennis. Mm-hmm. And so he said, why don't I come down to the National Tennis Centre in 2 weeks' time and I'll bring a camera crew and I can interview you of what the current coverage of para-standing is in the UK and what your plans are. I thought, oh my goodness, we're just at the very, very early stages of this, but I can't miss this opportunity. So I had to go and speak to the powers that be at the LTA to make sure they were happy with that.
Mm.
And then Adam came down 2 weeks later, and it was a lovely sunny day. And Emma was one of the producers of the show from her company.
Yeah.
And I met Emma, met Adam, got interviewed by Adam. We got Adam on we've got a number of grass courts at the National Tennis Centre where I work in South London.
Yeah.
So he had a hit with one of our other para-standing players at the time that I just started to know. It was a guy called Nicky Maxwell. And those guys hit it off, and Nicky is actually now the president of the Para-Standing Tennis Alliance globally.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of just floated a few ideas to Adam, Emma, and Nicky about, let's do a tennis festival at the National Tennis Centre. And so that was in November 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam said, we'd love to bring Emma and the film crew down. They filmed that, and the rest is history. And they created this brilliant documentary that was aired on Sky,
mm-hmm.
which I make a very, very small cameo in. But the most important thing is you get to see the participants, the players that are at the coalface of the sport, really driving for change across the globe. And I would say it's probably one of the most exciting formats of the game at the moment for disabled people.
Right.
And we have now, fast forward to current day,
mm-hmm.
we are now we have this thing called Play Your Way to Wimbledon. So just before Wimbledon, just after Wimbledon,
mm-hmm.
we engage with many people across Great Britain. So you could be playing at a local club,
yeah,
and playing part of Play Your Way to Wimbledon. And if you get through the various stages,
there's different stages,
you get to play at Wimbledon.
Wow.
And so over the last few years, we've tried to have impairment-specific formats of that at Play Your Way to Wimbledon. And I was pleased to say that last year we had para-standing tennis as an exhibition event at Play Your Way to Wimbledon. So the likes of Adam and Nicky and other players got to play at Wimbledon last year. So you can see there's a movement happening, which we're really supportive of. But as a nation, we've tried to take stock and understand how can we properly support this format. And that might be working with our venues and our coaches to ensure that they are confident to include people that with physical impairments that want to play the game standing
mm-hmm.
within their own environment, so that we can create this thriving ecosystem of para-standing tennis players.
Amazing. Wow, that sounds so good. So she, with Emma, I know she sort of said when I was, chatting to her on the podcast that she still feels that there's a long way to go, and there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, what's your view on it? Do you agree with her?
Yeah, I mean, if I just cast my mind back to 2012, London Paralympics in London, and I was lucky enough to be at that event in the time. And I remember being at the wheelchair tennis event at Eton Manor,
mm-hmm.
which is now an indoor tennis centre. And there was a lot of coverage and hype around this event is going to be the catalyst for all this, loads of activity around the country going to take place. And in reality, it hasn't really happened. I would say though that things have drastically improved, but it's not to the level that we would like.
Mm-hmm.
To put it into context, you've got 20%, 23% of the population that are deemed to be disabled or have a long-term health condition.
Yeah.
But when you look at the statistics from Sport England, if you're a disabled person, you're twice as likely to be inactive compared to a non-disabled person.
Yeah.
So that goes to show that the data is not suggesting that it's kind of this really thriving opportunity for disabled people to go to a local club and play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, within tennis, I would say we're not the perfect finished article, but we've got over 600 venues around the UK putting on opportunities for disabled people, either specifically or inclusively.
Mm-hmm.
We had probably around 16,000 people, disabled people playing tennis last year.
Wow.
So I mean, I would say we're probably one of the leading sports in GB of doing some great work for disabled people. But absolutely, there's so much more that we can be doing. And you were telling me off the podcast that you struggle to find opportunities locally to where you live.
Exactly, yeah, it's the same for myself as well. Because I've been trying to look for something local to me, and a lot of them seem to be, too far out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you're saying, it's very limited.
I mean, I'd probably say for your cities, your bigger metropolitan areas where it's more accessible, the opportunity is much greater. So we will find some opportunities for you in London.
Okay, fab.
And I can talk about that near the end of the podcast. But
that'd be amazing.
I would say, what we find as the main barriers for disabled people accessing sport, like tennis for us, is definitely transport. Yeah. So if you haven't got a car, or you're unable to drive or because of your impairment, or you just can't drive, that is a challenge. If you haven't got a bus stop, train station near you that will go to where you want to go to, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
So transport's one. Cost, I think there is this perception that sports like tennis is expensive, and to a degree it can be when you get to an ability where you're pushing on performance, and you want to, because it requires you to train more and have private coaching and stuff. But actually there's many community opportunities that people can access, but to your point, the awareness is not there.
It's not there, yeah.
So I would say perceptually it's kind of transport, cost, and then playing someone of a similar ability. So if you are a disabled person and you want to go and play at your local park, how do I go and find out who I can go and play? Yeah. Exactly, so the connections with family, friends, or other disabled people. So we're trying to do a much better job of trying to break down those barriers. So amazing, putting on opportunities in places where we know people can get to. Ensuring that the cost of activities are not expensive and they are manageable for people's personal budgets and for sure. Allowances, etc. And we're trying to create technology whereby if you go to our website or you access our app LTA Play, that we can hopefully start to create opportunities whereby if you're a certain ability, we'll try and support you in matching up with someone with a similar ability and impairment. Okay. Now, we're on a bit of a journey with that, but that's the kind of our ambition, to ensure that we can continue to open up tennis to many communities in Great Britain.
So I wanted to go on and sort of final few questions. So what are your top tips for people who wish to go into sport?
I think sometimes it can be a scary thought of going to a local club. And I even find that sometimes when you go to a club where you don't know anyone. So, I mean, I would strongly advise that, for people to try and understand what do you want from sport. Do you feel that going to a club you're gonna be safe, you're gonna be welcomed and belong? So try and understand what clubs are local to you, and try and understand from your own needs, what clubs out there might suit your needs. And if you're really struggling, you're not too sure, always try and reach out to that local club, or even reach out to the national governing body or the county association, who can hopefully help guide you in understanding, what the right opportunities for you.
It's like making sure that they have the right facilities as well that you need.
Absolutely, right. And that's definitely something I'm trying to advocate with our club network and our county network is, don't treat disabled people as this one homogenous group. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Everyone's going to have different needs. Exactly. The different characteristics that I as a kind of ED&I lead at the LTA that I cater for, I'm always advocating for our team to consider that as well. So if I've got our women and girls lead, we need to ensure that disabled females are included in our activities and they have a greater sense of belonging.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm always trying to advocate that. What else would I say? I think if you're thinking about to your point, Zubee, you were thinking about where can I actually go and play?
Yeah.
Where can I go and find the information?
Where can I go? Yeah.
We really find that word of mouth is a powerful tool, but if you don't know the people that are telling you about these things, you're not going to know. So I would say, and I'm going to talk about this from a sport lens, not just tennis, but Paralympics GB, who I think many people will be aware of, that probably perceived as the governing body to support para athletes going to Paralympics, but they also do some really good work in the community. So they have this initiative called Everybody Moves, which is for sport clubs to go onto that platform and sign up and advertise the opportunities that they put on at their local venue. So if you're not aware of where to go and play a certain sport, I would encourage you to Google Everybody Moves, Paralympics GB, and hopefully there'll be an opportunity near to you. If you can't find that information, I would encourage you to go onto your local authority's website, and they have this thing called Local Offer, and a number of sports clubs in that local area are starting to promote their opportunities via there. And then obviously you've got your trusted Google, try and be really specific on what you're looking for, and hopefully those things.
That's the thing with a lot of things that I've researched. You research things, but I find a lot of these places, especially sports activities, they're not local, they're quite far away, I think because of space and obviously cost to run them. So.
I mean, to put it in a tennis context, I think that's the journey we've been on. We've probably focused in on the bigger cities, and as our sport has grown and our offer has grown, we are working with much more local venues and organisations that are maybe in smaller towns and boroughs across the country. And if you were to visit our website, it's www.lta.org.uk, there is a section about our work for disabled people, and we've got some highlighted opportunities around the country that you can click on and get in touch with a local venue. And if you're still unsure and you can't find that information, you can always go onto the website and go to the Contact Us page, and we'll be able to support you in that way. So I mean, that one. And lastly, it's a slight little plug. This, I think everyone perceives tennis to be, when we talk about major events, is Wimbledon. And Wimbledon's, the golden crown, the jewel in the tennis calendar globally. It's enriched in tradition. But we also have all these other great events that disabled people can go and access throughout the summer of June. And one of the events that I think would be brilliant for some of your listeners, that if they are based in London, we have this thing called the British Open. So it's the Roehampton British Open, which is a Super Series event for wheelchair tennis. And last year tickets were free of charge. TBC on that this year, but even if there is a cost, it's going to be a very low cost, because what we want to do is we want to showcase our wheelchair stars in the best possible form. We want the whole community to come out and watch the talent that these athletes do.
Sounds exciting.
We've got the likes of Alfie Hewitt, Gordon Reid, Lucy Shuker, some of our top GB wheelchair athletes that will be playing in London, which is the first week of July. All the tickets and information will be on our website. And if you're around, Zubee, it'd be lovely for you to come down. But I mean, they're just some of the things that I would suggest, that if people are thinking about getting involved, hopefully it's been useful. Oh yeah, definitely has been really useful. This is a bit similar to the question that I just asked, but maybe a bit more depth. What advice would you give disabled people who may wish to take up sport or tennis?
but they're not really, but they don't feel confident enough to give it a try?
Yeah, I mean, whatever your impairment, disability, you know, I would strongly advocate for anyone listening, please just give it a go. Because all I would say in our sport of tennis, it doesn't matter your ability, your impairment. We try and advocate and we educate our workforce and our venues to really try and take a person-centred approach. And so, you know, if you are thinking that, tennis is this really hard sport that you switch on the TV and see Wimbledon, you know, that's not what you're going to see at a number of our venues. We really try and understand what are your needs and try and adapt, you know, whether it's progressing things or regressing things, or using different forms of equipment to get the best out of that individual. We try and do that. And, you know, we'd love to see more people come into our sport, because we believe it's a sport for life, and it's a sport truly for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. And what can people look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned the British Open coming up in the summer.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, well, we've so my colleague Matt Elkington is putting on a number of things across the country. So we are actually working with the Dan Maskell Tennis Trust, which is a great tennis charity. It's many tennis charities. We have our own, which is the LTA Tennis Foundation, but the Dan Maskell Tennis Trust supports disabled people that want to, you know, access private coaching, or they need support with their equipment, or they're progressing onto more performance level, you know, and as we know, people need to travel to certain things. That foundation is brilliant with supporting individuals with various impairments, but they also support people with support venues and our coaches to put on activities for disabled people. And I'm pleased to say that the LTA, for the third year in a row, is going to be teaming up with the Dan Maskell Tennis Trust to put on a number of impairment-specific camps around the UK.
That's great.
So I haven't got the information to hand, but, you know, I'll happily send that on to you so you can you know, cascade that to your listeners, but also that we'll have those opportunities on the LTA website and various groups on Facebook. So I'd say they're incoming, and we have our events as well. I mentioned British Open, but we have, you know, events like the Birmingham Open, we have the Eastbourne Open, we have Queen's, and for the first time in 50 years we have a women's event coming to London. Now we are hoping at a number of these events we'll have some showcases and exhibitions of our various formats, but Eastbourne, which is at the end of June, the week before Wimbledon, we have a wheelchair competition taking place where we've got, you know, pretty much the top 8 in the world coming to Eastbourne, and that competition will be running alongside the non-disabled men's and women's elite event. And tickets are still available on the LTA website. So
do you show any of these events that you do? Are they ever televised?
Yeah, you'll definitely find Wimbledon on the red button, and actually just on BBC One and BBC Two. You will often find the wheelchair tennis event taking place. But for our events, Eastbourne, I'm unsure actually on that, but there will be lots of coverage around that on our website. Live
is it on mainly on your website that you promote?
Yeah, there will be live scoring on our website, and you know, we work with the International Tennis Federation on that event, and sometimes they have live streaming of that, but that's a bit TBC, but definitely live scoring, and there will be lots of coverage of that over the summer months.
Brilliant, thank you. There's a lot to look forward to there. And finally, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in contact?
I think the best way to get in touch with myself, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always find me on there, but if you want to know more about how to get involved in tennis and the various opportunities across the country, again, if you visit www.lta.org.uk, you'll be able to find all the amazing opportunities out there for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. That was great.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.